But the more I got involved with accidents and the causes of accidents and how accidents happen and preventing accidents, these phrases just drove me crazy. And there's one phrase in particular that I want to try to get you and me to help our supervisors and managers just eliminate that phrase from our terminology. If you're in the world of safety, you and I both know that there's some phrases that get thrown around all the time. And when you first get into safety, it probably doesn't bother you. I know it didn't bother me. So today we're going to talk about accident response. I want to show you a 3-step framework for how to think about accident response to make preventing accidents a lot better. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I actually have a really helpful concept for how to prevent accidents altogether. So we're going to talk about accident response. We're going to talk about 3-step framework. I'm going to share with you one phrase I can't stand. And then at the end, I'm going to actually tie a bow on it by explaining a tool that you can use to prevent accidents in the future. So stick around. This is going to be a good one. Hey, before we get into the video today, I wanted to tell you how you can get a free OSHA audit checklist. If you want to prepare your team for an unexpected OSHA audit, this is the best way. Just go to my website, helpwithosha.com. Right there on the homepage, you can click and download a free OSHA audit checklist. It's the best way to prepare your team for an unexpected OSHA audit. Now, let's talk about the framework for how to perform accident response at your company. Now, there are 3 different parts to this, but before I jump into the actual, the gears of it and how everything works, I want to tell you a quick story that really changed the way I think about accident investigations. You see, I was working with a company. I was a consultant, I was working with a company, and they had a serious accident, and they called me in to do an accident investigation to find out exactly what happened. Well, I came in, and when I got there, I learned that on 3rd shift, they had this big piece of equipment turn over and actually fall on an employee. And that's all I really knew. And I was trying to piece together because they were in production. This had happened on 3rd shift. By the time I got there, it was 1st shift. And so everything had kind of started working like a normal day. And everyone that was there on 3rd shift had gone home. So I was going through notes and I was trying to piece together stuff off of a security camera to find out what had happened. I was using every tool at my disposal to do an accident investigation. And I've done lots of accident investigations, but I'm going through this process to try to understand exactly what happened. Now, the person that got hurt had been taken to the hospital. They were in rough shape. The piece of equipment, the backstory was the piece of equipment was in the production area and was actually being moved from the production area through the facility over to the maintenance welding shop so it could be repaired. So it was a fairly large piece of equipment was being moved. Now, it took me hours to try to piece this together, exactly what happened. I ended up calling people and having interviews and finding out. And the Cliff Notes version, the short version of it was, they were moving a piece of equipment. They were trying to take it across through the department with very small, narrow aisleways and doors, and it wasn't stable. The floor had lots of potholes and drains and things that weren't stable, and the people moving it didn't speak the same language. There was some people that were speaking Spanish, there were some people that were speaking English. There was a forklift involved where they were trying to kind of shift it on the wheels. The canister wheels weren't driving. Mind you, I told you this was a Cliff Notes version, but you can see there was a lot of details going into it. And what happened was this thing hit a drain. The wheel dropped, it tipped over, and the guy just kind of fell back like a cartoon where the thing falls on top of him and it crushed him on the floor. And he was stuck underneath of it, and they actually had to lift it off of him when the emergency crew got there to help him go to the hospital. So it was messy all the way around. Well, when I was doing the accident investigation, we're trying to find out what happened. And the goal is to find out what happened so we don't let it ever happen again. And that story really changed the way I think about accident response. And so accident response, we're not talking about first aid and CPR, we're talking about accident response from a company procedure standpoint. So let's dive into the 3-step, the framework for how to do accident response. So the very first step is when someone has an accident, big, small, whatever it is, they're to notify their immediate supervisor. They're to notify their immediate supervisor. Now, just about every orientation talks about this. Usually it's in the handbook, it's in the safety manual. Employees need to know this the first day on the job. So if you don't have that at your company, make sure you do that, because I've made that mistake before where I didn't have that actually documented. But we got to have it written down. We got to train on it. We need people to just know it. We can't assume that they know it, because sometimes they'll go, well, I told Johnny in the break room, that I smashed my finger, and I told Johnny, and then we just kind of worked it off, and now the thing is infected. And so they don't report the accident when it happens, and it needs to be reported to the supervisor immediately. And then the supervisor needs to make sure that that person is taken care of. And that goes into the second step. So the first step is communication. We got to notify somebody. Somebody needs to know that somebody isn't just anybody, that somebody should be the immediate supervisor. The second step is going to be provide care. Take care of the employee. If the employee gets hurt at work, if a team member gets hurt on the job, the company needs to make that person whole. We need to make sure that we're providing medical care. That might be a first aid cabinet on the wall where they grab a Band-Aid and they take care of it themselves. That might be being rushed out in an ambulance. Okay? Anywhere in between there. Could be going to urgent care, could be seeing a doctor. But that person needs to have medical care, okay? So first step, let somebody know. Why do we let somebody know? Because we want that employee to be taken care of. Now this is where the third step comes in, and this is where we do an investigation. We do an accident report. And let me just clarify this for a minute. When somebody notifies their supervisor, the supervisor's number one job should be to make sure they get that person medical care and they're taken care of. The second part should be to make sure that that's documented correctly. Okay? So first step, medical care. Second step, documentation. And the reason documentation is important is because we need to remember what happened. And there's a joke that I say probably more than I should, where I say, hey, I got a good memory, it's just really short. And that's true with every manager. You got a good memory, it's just really short, because you're always thinking about the next thing. And as a safety manager, I know you're busy. As an HR person, you're busy. And so it is very, very easy to forget details because they're not top of mind. So notify, then we're going to provide care, and then we're going to do an accident investigation. So part of the accident investigation is making sure we get documents. The accident needs to be reported. We have an accident report where it documents who, what, when, where, all the facts. Who, what, when, where. This happened at 3 o'clock in the morning. It happened on a Tuesday night. It was the 7th of November. We understand what happened because we have facts that tell us the details of what happened. The investigation is really the how. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Right? It's not facts. It starts, now we get into some interpretation. So when we're talking about doing the investigation, the purpose of the investigation isn't to place blame on anybody. That might happen. There might be a write-up, there might be discipline action, maybe somebody didn't follow protocol. That's a separate thing, right? The purpose of the investigation is to find out what happened so we can prevent it from happening again. That's why we do it. We want to prevent it from happening again. We do not want to have the same problem happen next week. We don't want to have the same accident happen 2 weeks from now or a month from now or a year from now. We want to take whatever happened and fix it, right? We want to put a corrective action in place. Now, let me tell you, to circle back to the phrase that just drives me nuts as a safety manager, and it probably bothers you too, but I don't know if it's just a pet peeve of mine. I can't stand when I look at an accident report, and the accident report will have all the information of the employee, right? This was John Doe. He was working in this department. He was working at this time of day. He had a cart that needed to be moved, a big piece of machinery that needed to be moved, and he's moving it, and he hits a drain, and it tips over, and it smashes him, and it says what, usually the question will say something like, what caused the accident, or what caused the injury? I should say what caused the injury. Well, the machine fell on his right leg and broke his right leg. What caused the broken leg? The machine falling on it. And then one of the last questions, oftentimes it's the very last question on the accident report, is what could have been done to prevent this accident? You know what the phrase is I'm going to tell you? It's a phrase that I can't stand. John Doe needs to be more careful. That doesn't help anybody. What did you do to prevent future accidents? I told John Doe to be more careful. I had a safety meeting with my department, and I told everybody they need to be more careful. Being more careful is not a corrective action. Should you be more careful? Yeah, we all should. That's not a corrective action. That doesn't fix the problem. It doesn't prevent a future problem. We can't measure people being more careful. Okay? Can't do it. So, let me circle all the way back to what happened with the piece of machinery that was being moved in the accident investigation I did. When I was doing the accident investigation, I met with one of the senior leaders in leadership, you know what I'm saying, one of the top dogs at the company. And I was explaining all the facts of what I'd found. And he boiled it down to something really simple. He said, well, the way I understand it, if I'm looking at all this and I understand it correctly, and I might be wrong here, but it looks like the reason it fell was because it wasn't stable. And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought, no, it fell because it hit the drain. Why did it hit the drain? Because there was a miscommunication. Why was there miscommunication? Because they spoke different languages. Did they have the right equipment? I went down this rabbit hole of all these different cause and effect. There's something called the 5 whys. I won't get into that, but it's like, why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why did that happen? And you can go down this long rabbit hole and you get confused. And he put it in such clear language. He said, seems to me it happened because it was unstable. If we can standardize a way to move equipment so that we ensure stability before it's ever moved, this won't happen again. And I was like, wow, you're right. And I had to eat a piece of humble pie because I didn't think of it like that. I thought of it like all the different things that happen together, right? There's never one thing that causes an accident. There's a million things that cause an accident, right? There's a million things. There's fatigue, there's equipment, there's PPE, there's all kinds of, there's bad training, there's all kinds of things that can cause, there are factors that go in to cause the accident. But solving the accident, preventing future accidents, can usually be boiled down to something that's pretty straightforward. Stability. If we could make that more stable, it won't tip over. If it doesn't tip over, we're not going to have an accident. Even if they don't speak the same language, even if they're fatigued, even if they're using the wrong equipment, if it's stable, it's probably not going to happen again. So to me, that was a real light bulb moment to understand. And it made me think, this is a quote by Jack Sparrow. I came across it, Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean, And he says, the problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem. Let me say that again, because that's some wisdom. The problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem. You see, your managers at your company, the problem is that their attitude about the problem is people just need to be more careful. We don't need to change what we're doing. We've been doing it this way for 10 years. We just need to change that people need to be more careful. That's their attitude about the problem. So to me, that was a light bulb moment. I thought it was really, really helpful. Just to kind of recap what we talked about today. So you've got step one, if you're doing accident response, you have to make sure your employees understand how important it is to notify their supervisor. They're not going to get in trouble. They're going to get in trouble if they don't notify it. And more importantly than that, they probably won't get the right medical care. If we delay reporting accidents, there's a chance workers' compensation will deny the claim, and then they're not going to get the medical care they need. So report it right away. We don't want something to get infected or have a problem. Report it right away. Second part of that, after we report the accident, we're getting the employee the proper medical care. And that falls on the supervisor and the manager. So make sure your managers understand it's their job to take care of their employees, right? You can't micromanage everybody, but if somebody comes to me and they go, hey man, I just sliced my wrist with this box cutter. Stop what you're doing. Let's get you taken care of, man. Let's get you bandaged up. Let's get you to urgent care and get you some stitches, whatever it needs. Okay? So that's number two. And then the third one is the accident investigation to find out what caused the accident so we can prevent it from happening again. And then, like I said, that little golden nugget of information is we have to make sure that the solution we bring to the table is actually going to solve the problem. There's 50 million reasons why an accident happens. Lots of times there's one clear way it can be prevented. So, having said that, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. If you would, please share this with somebody else. Let somebody know about this. I want Help with OSHA to be a resource that safety managers can use all over the country so they know how important it is to take care of their people, because no one should get hurt at work.